a plan and a purpose for my life that's about more than just me. From grief to purpose. No, I am not my pain, and I'm telling you my journey of healing is gonna take me from grief to purpose. Turning my pain into purpose. From grief to purpose. Turning all my pain into purpose. From grief to purpose.
Hey friends, welcome back to the From Grief to Purpose podcast. Today, I'm honored to have with me Mojo Perry, a prolific recording artist, guitarist, and storyteller whose music reflects a lifetime of grit, creativity, and redemption. So over the course of his career, Mojo released 9 records and published 124 songs, all crafted while battling a severe opiate addiction to pain pills that lasted 26 years. Despite the grip of addiction, his music never faltered in its authenticity or brilliance, standing as a testament to his raw talent and resilience. Now, celebrating 10 years of sobriety, Mojo has transformed his life, emerging from the depths of the opioid epidemic to become an inspiring voice of recovery and perseverance. His journey of redemption infuses his storytelling with humor, wisdom, and hard-earned insight, making him a beacon of hope of others walking their own paths of struggle and renewal. Mojo Perry's art is more than music. It's a celebration of survival and triumph of the human spirit, and the reason to my why of why he's a guest on the show on today. Mojo, Mr. Mojo Perry, how are you? Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm doing fine, and thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you so much. I'm doing great. Excited, pumped, ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely. So let's kind of get into it now. I know a little bit about your journey, and just so excited to be able to share it with others. So how about we start from the beginning and just get into a little bit of how it all got started for you with the opioid and being it starting from pain pills. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that began?
Yeah, it was quite the journey. Now, I hate to point a finger at anybody, but when I was a kid, my mom grew up with really bad teeth. So she was really adamant about taking my brother and I to the dentist. So we had, every 4, every 6 months we were in there. And we had moved from a big city to this small town, kind of where everybody knew everybody, and we were the outsiders. And my parents had bought a business. So I think that in the small town, some people thought that we had money, but we were struggling just like everybody else, right? Well, every time we went to the dentist, back then they didn't have the digital, right? So, and my mom was a nurse, so she just grew up trusting medical professionals. So every visit, the dentist would come out and say, oh, they have 3 cavities or they have 4 cavities. And, they'd get them filled. And my mom would lay into us about brushing our teeth. And I'm telling you, I would scrub them teeth. I mean, I would just pound them, right? And so then eventually what happened later in life, we found out that it was extremely likely that he was giving fillings when we didn't need them. And one of the dentists that I spoke to as an adult said that that's highly likely because usually the first teeth to break are like in the front more. And all my molars were just pounded with on top and bottom, just filled with overly excessive cavity fillings, and the mercury back then, or the lead, would expand. And so I started breaking teeth. And so between all of those dentist visits as a teenager, started roughly when I was like 15, 16, I got my first introduction to what I now call hors d'oeuvres, which was the Tylenol with codeine. So Tylenol 3, which now as an adult, I've gone through them all the enes, ons, ins, ons, like hydrocodone, roxycodone, Oxycontin, morphine, Dilaudid, whole grain, half grain, 100 grain, all of them, Tylenol 1 through 5, I've done them all. And to this day, I've never tried hard drugs. So I learned that I could trust what was on that bottle, and the thing about addiction, for a lot of you people out there, maybe you can relate, is that, there's such this big cloud around it of that it's this bad thing. And in God's truth, it is. It's a horrible thing that people go through. There are people suffering. There are people dying from it. But addiction isn't about all bad. It works. And when you start to understand why you became an addict, you start learning, you go through the program or whatever your journey is, you realize basically that way back when it started, you're in pain, something's wrong. Like, you have issues at home, you have problems inside, or whatever the deal, high anxiety, and then you're just goofing off with your friends or whatever, or in my case, a dentist. All of a sudden you take a pill or you try some alcohol or you smoke weed or whatever the deal is. And then that's when you realize that you were in pain and the drugs took that away. And the way our minds are wired is to do what's easy, so when you start experiencing relief from something, you start doing more of it. And then when it works, oh my God, it's the greatest thing in the world. I know that with my journey, the addiction, when the pills were doing what I wanted them to do, making me feel good, helping me create and everything else, it was unstoppable. But then like anything, all good things come to an end. It just erodes away your life. It's a very slow way to die. It destroys you inside out, and you as a person is the last thing that gets destroyed. It takes away families, relationships, money, jobs, everything around it. And then when there's nothing left, you're the one that goes. And some people, they overdose early, but it still doesn't change that the path is very damaging. So in my case, it started off with the medical. And, in fact, to be honest with you, I never even tried marijuana until I was 26, and I was adamantly against it. But I was on opioid pills all the way through. It got to a point where at the end of my addiction, like 26 years, I was taking 40 to 60 pills, in a day at times. And especially that last 2 years between 2012 and 2014, I was overdosing regularly. Like I'd wake up gasping for air because, I was so sedated that, I would just kind of quit breathing in the middle of the night. And I still have PTSD from it. If I get really tired, I remember that. And it's a horrible way to go because you wake up, but you're not awake. You're completely aware of what's going on. You know that you're suffocating. And in your head, you think that you're banging whoever's next to you or kicking the headboard of your bed or whatever it is. But in reality, you're just completely out of it and you're fighting to stay alive. And so it was quite the journey from starting off as a teenager all the way up until, 2014. So that was, my entire adult life. So, and even now, I'm 55, I'm still learning all the things I should have with a clear head, in my 30s and 40s even. And, it just makes for, quite the, there's a lot of things I would never take back, throughout my addiction. It was my life, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say, I ruined or wrecked my life. I didn't. The truth is I had a lot of fun. There was girls, there was money. I was traveling, I was performing, I was writing records, and I had enough income to sustain quite a very large habit. And, when it stopped, it was because all that ended. The fun ended. My life became miserable. I was miserable, and I was just done. And luckily for me, it took. So,
So let's go back then a bit, because I'm curious to know, of course, how did you first get started into music? And then with the opioid addiction, was there a pain point for you that took you from the prescription drug from your dentist to, more heavier opioids? Like, was there something going on in your life, your family life, your upbringing? You know how some people have that story of
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
just doing drugs just to numb, a specific pain point, as you mentioned. Like, what was your particular that point for you, and then how did you transition? Was it from all that into music, or you were already a musician of sorts?
Well, I guess I was considered a prodigy. I started when I was 5,
Okay.
and very quickly, I was able to translate, music, and I had this condition that I didn't even know what it was until fairly recently. We're talking like the last, 12 years. It's called synesthesia, and
Mm.
it's where in some people they smell something, like sound will trigger something, and like they'll see like shapes or squares or something with that. In my case, I translate sound into colors. So when you see the pictures of me performing or videos of me performing, my eyes are always closed because I'm basically just fixated on this whole thing that's going on right in front of me to pursue.
Mhm.
The way that music kind of played into that was two things. One, it saved me. It genuinely, excuse me, it genuinely saved me because I was able to um, express what was going on. In fact, I have song titles like Drugs, Pills, Wrestling with the Bottle, Codeine, Valium, and other things. And um, the problem with all that is that I had incorporated drug use with my creative process.
Mm.
So when I cleaned up later in life, that became a monumental issue because like I always had this thing that in my head I relied on. The creativity still comes from your heart, but the drugs and things allow you to have access to different parts of your feelings and your visions, as they'd say, you know, uh, by stimulating you in different ways. And for me, that's how it did. And to answer your other question, yeah, I did. Like I have a family and I love them very much, and uh, but it was very different. They had challenges. My half brothers and sisters had a tragedy happen when they were young, and it affected them. And my brother and I, my only full blood brother and I, came along after that fact. And there's a big difference in age between all of us. I want to say that some of them it's like 6-7 years, and so without being mean, this was then. It's not them today,
Right.
and I don't really know them today.
Mm.
At some point in time, many years back, I decided to check out. Like I just kind of kept a distance from things, but there was a lot of anger, there was control, there was manipulation, and the control aspect of it alone is enough to take away a person's identity. So, like when you try to say if something happens or someone does something to you, you try to share like, hey, that really hurt me, that really upset me. Oh, that's no big deal. I wouldn't have blah blah blah, and then everything about what's going on gets dismissed.
Mm.
And when you start from a young age and you go up to older to where you're going to, that can really affect because your formative years are when you're younger, right?
Mhm.
You're learning, you're experiencing things. And so a lot of the things that I saw as a young kid was fighting, like fist fighting between my two older brothers, like bad fighting,
Mm.
uh, anger, fighting amongst each other, all the same issues. And then that trickled down to my full blood brother and I. And so there was endless fighting between him and I. In fact, we went over 30 years without really talking. And even now, as I try to move forward, I'm still cautious. And, I guess the word black sheep, comes in every large family. If you look at the studies, they show that, larger families, they always kind of single someone out. And then, in the spiritual world, karma, they call that, we come along because it's our job to relieve, to break those bonds of our family, the traits of, in my family, there's addiction, alcoholism, obesity. There's jail, prison, triple homicide. And these are all things that if there wasn't something there, it wouldn't be so prominent. And then to have it go to their children in many cases, clearly there's something going on. But that's not for me to say. What my job is as an addict, is taking care of Mojo, making sure that Mojo's on a good path, trying to do the right things and trying to deprogram everything that I learned. It doesn't mean that I don't like any of my family or I hate them or that they hate me. It just means that I feel safer when I'm not in their life. But, the saying, like, you come into this world with your blood family and you leave with, the family you create. And so over the years, like, and we're talking decades at this juncture, several, my family consists of close friends and bandmates. And a lot of the people I've dated, they become sisters to me. People that I extremely value and love and rely on. So, yeah, there was things. There was a lot of it. And my music helped me to express what was going on. And I think that's why I kind of turned out as good as I did in the end. I feel that because I've been through the rooms, as they call it, the meeting rooms, and I've seen how a lot of people didn't. I feel like I've had it easy. I basically just decided to stop, and it was Obamacare that made that possible because I had medical stuff going on. I got my medical card. I immediately started addressing everything, and pow, next thing you know, I'm in recovery, and that in itself is a whole different journey. So yeah, it did affect my music, affected me, affected everything around me, affected my friends, my family. And I think that when you talk about abuse and control and manipulation and things like that, when the opioid epidemic came along, which basically murdered 6 million people, then it kind of made it so people couldn't just say, well, you're a bad person because you're an addict. Only bad people who are not good people, they do drugs, they become addicts, they're this, they're that. Well, the opioid epidemic helped educate people that it can happen to anybody. It's not a moral issue. It is it's a physical thing. You become dependent on it and stuff. And yeah, so I think that in a lot of ways, I'm fortunate. I feel blessed that I went through this journey because the person that I turned into today, I'm really happy to be that man. And I don't think I would have had the insights or the feelings or all the things I have if I didn't go through that journey. It was horrible at times, especially towards the end there. I mean, I can't express to you what withdrawal from 26 years of opiates is like. It's just bad, all bad, nothing good, just bad. And to walk through those gates, and I feel like I'm looking good, standing tall. I'm still getting my life together. It's a big challenge, but that's addiction. That's part of the journey process. So
yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing some of those hard moments that we all have. We all have, especially about your family members. Where we are totally opposites, and then life happens, and you have that trauma in your family and things like that. And you mentioned a bit about karma. I always think about the generational cycle sometimes too that people face, and they find themselves repeating those same things that a parent may repeat, or a grandparent or whatever. You're wondering like, where the heck did this come from? But in those 26 years, there's 26 years through all that you faced. I know you've probably seen many different things, especially in that world as it relates to others that were also doing opioids or even harder drugs.
Yeah.
What was the turning point, though, that made you realize you needed to make a change? Because you said that you just stopped, but what was that point for you that you realized that you needed to make a change and start the recovery process?
I would say, I think about this probably once a week. you know, if not more. But there was a period where I want to say it was like 13, maybe 14 years into that 26 years.
Okay.
And I had run out of medication, right? And at that time, it was medication. And it wasn't until from that point on that I started calling it dope, goofballs, started using slang. And I think every addict has, slang for their drug of choice, and the rituals they have, when they use and obtain and so forth. And what happened in my case is I was having these problems, and like physical withdrawal will bring a lot of unpleasant things. And one of them that comes on as this one of God's many, up yours, to an addict is restless leg syndrome, which is where all you really want to do when you're sick, and you're getting off drugs is you want to sleep through it. You want to just take some sleeping pills and go through it. But there's this thing that happens with your arms. It could be your arms or your legs or whatever, and you have to move them. You just, like, you sit still and then something compels you to just move them. And it can be so bad. Like for me, what I would do is I would grab my hands and I would squeeze them like really hard and stuff. And so I went to the doctor. And, and you got to remember at the time, the Sackler family in Purdue, they had, put out this non-habit forming drug, Oxycontin, right? And people were dying from it. And I encourage everybody out there that if you check out, I think, I forget what it's called on Netflix, but Matthew Broderick is the main guy. He plays the Sackler guy. That spells out exactly what went on. They had sent their salespeople out, their reps, to all these doctors, and they taught them what they wanted them to say. So I was trying to tell this lady doctor, what was going on. Like, I was sick, and I had other things going on, restless leg syndrome, and, I couldn't sleep. It was the beginning stages of what I now know was physical withdrawal. I mean, hands down, I was dope sick and it was coming on, but I wasn't that addicted yet where, it was going to make me violently ill, because I still had enough in it. And the doctor just sat there going, shaking her head at me. And then what she said was, you don't have addiction. What you have is pseudo addiction. And she gave me even more and a stronger dose, and out the door I went with my script. And there were other occasions like that where when I was trying to get help towards the end there, I think a lot of addicts became garbage to medical facilities. Like they just wanted you to go away and to stay away. We now know we really messed up. I don't want to get sued. I'm not responsible for you. Just stay away. And I was calling, trying to get help, and I wasn't getting anywhere because the whole point, you see those signs, call this number and get the help you need. Well, it should say, if you have money or insurance, call and we'll do something for you.
Yeah.
Because without it, you got nothing. And I remember that on that phone, I had a call come in and call waiting, and I was on hold, and I hit the button real quick, and it said that your prescription is being filled. The doctor's office, instead of getting me the help I was asking, they just assumed I was wanting more drugs, and they gave them to me, which I gladly took because, at that point you have to feed the monkey because she gets sick. And it was, it happened rather rapidly after that 13-year mark because I kind of knew that I was in trouble. But you got to remember, the internet, what we all know now for the World Wide Web is really available. But, I'm 55. I remember a time when it wasn't there. When, we didn't have cell phones, we had pagers, right? And in that era, you did not have the access to the information that we now have today. And then the opioid epidemic, I mean, it created so much knowledge for regular people, medical people, and everybody, that there's so many resources that are available now, as well as drugs to help you manage it, that wasn't there when I was going through all that. So it was kind of, in a way, to be honest with you, I look at it that nobody, I don't care who you are, if you were in my shoes, you would have went down the same path. The only thing that would be different is if you came out on the other side or not. So, yeah, that was pretty horrifying for me at that time to realize that, that wasn't being listened to. In fact, I remember in that series of Matthew, when they were educating their salespeople what to say, when they came to the part where you don't have addiction, you have pseudo addiction, I stood up. I was sitting on a couch and I pointed at the TV and I said, "That's what that lady said to me." And instantaneously, I remembered everything about it. I can still see her shaking her head at me. The only thing I can't remember is her name or where that was at. And I was traveling so much at the time, playing music and stuff, that, it made it very easy to get drugs anywhere I went, basically. In the music business, it's just a circus for, fun and games, as they say.
As they say. There's a lot going on in the music business behind the scenes. And really in life, this can happen in, major corporations. You don't know until you know. But for your recovery process, was it I know you mentioned some of the symptoms that one goes through, you went through. Was it an easy process, would you say? As far as, when I say easy, I mean,
No.
how people have how many symptoms did you actually go through before you can say, well, I finally have kicked this addiction? Or is it still like a continuous journey for you even now? Some of the trauma related to it, or some of the,
Right.
do you have any desires, I don't know, to
I get what you're saying. Is it something that I still struggle with?
is it something you struggle with? Yeah.
I've got 10 years under my belt, and, I certainly have a lot of different experiences with others that, they've had, 18 years or how many years, and then they slip up. Now, the program used to be really strict, where, like, say, if you were clean for 5 years and then you had a slip up, then you lost all your clean time, and now you're starting at zero. It's this big tragic thing. Well, that's not really, comforting for somebody who's been through a lot, like an alcoholic, which I think is they have it as some of the worst. I think, you grow up thinking, which one is the king, bad drug. They're all bad, but what I saw with alcoholics, I started in rehab and going through everything else. I mean, they have it bad. But no, I don't struggle with it at all. For me, by the time that it came done, like, I did not have anything. I did not have the spiritual or the emotional addiction to it. Like, I need this in order to, I look better. I feel I look better. I have more confidence with it, or all those things did happen for sure. But by the time I was done, like, I just got done nearly dying, it was in double digits. I don't really want to share the actual number, but it's over 20 times that I woke up gasping for air. I write down everything in my journal, my diary. So counting all that was frightening to me. And so I was ready, when the time came. I just needed the help to get past that hard part. And you asked, like, what do you go through? Oh, it was awful. And, you've got fluids coming out everywhere in your body, both ends. Then when there's nothing left, you're dry heaving, then you go through the hot and the cold sweats, and, that restless leg syndrome, guess what? It's still there, and you got to kick it, but, you still go through this breaking point. And I don't believe in the books. I think that science is amazing. You can tell you a lot, but to say that, you broke your habit because you were dry for a week, I think that looks good in writing. It looks good for someone who wrote that book or whatever, but it's not like that for everybody. I know that it wasn't like that for me. And 26 years was my entire adult life, and it was over half my life. And even now, when you talk about like the recovery I got in, 36 years, I've been dealing with this. I'm 55. So, when you look at it from that regard, you just don't walk away from something like that.
Yeah.
The devil gets his due. You're going to get in a scrap, and you got to dig your feet in, and you have to understand, like, I'm going to be sick for a while, but you have it all built up in your head that it's going to be this horrible thing, and it is. But you know what else is horrible? The flu. The flu is horrible. You go through many of the same symptoms when you have the flu, and you have other medical things, you go through it. But the real issue is that you use, like when we talk about drugs, right, and addiction, what it does for you is it helps you to like deal with whatever. That was my crutch. Like I'm feeling bad. My family does things that hurt me, and they don't care. But I take these pills. It doesn't matter to me as much. I smoke some weed. It doesn't matter to me as much. I'm having problems with this. And, take some pills. That's how you learn to deal with the things in your life, is by using that substance. That's why addiction works, because it's working to help you through that. So when you face that gate, as I call it, that dark path, valley of darkness that you got to go through, no matter who you are, you're going to go through it. If you understand that it's going to be like physically bad, like no different than a really bad case of the flu, and you minimize that you're not dependent on a drug to help you go through this, which is the big problem, which is why you want to use it. You use drugs to get through everything else. Now you can't use it to get through the stuff. And then you have it in your head that, oh, my life is over. I'm just not going to have any more fun. My music isn't going to be good. My art isn't going to be good. Drugs made it all awesome. It's just a load of BS. I've had better times sober. And I used to laugh at the people who would tell me things like, you're going to hit a point where you're going to be glad that you're sober and you're going to have better times. I used to laugh at that stuff. What planet are you on? I remember telling one lady, and realized that I was really wrong. Your quality of life gets better because you're not running from everything, which is what alcoholism addiction is. There's something that it's doing that makes you use it as a tool to run away. And for a lot of you out there, I don't want to say that means that you're a coward, you're running. That's not how addiction works. If you knew that something was going to, wreck your life, damage your life, cause you problems, take all your money away, cause you divorced and to lose your kids or whatever your rock bottom is, you wouldn't take it. You wouldn't do it. Like, we all know that if you pick up a hammer and you hit yourself in the head, it's going to hurt you and possibly kill you if you do it hard enough, so you don't do it. Addiction is that covert monster that kind of comes in and it helps you and it works and it entices you with fun and makes everything better, and that's how it creeps in. So, when you look at the end result of all that, you got to go through that gate. You can't help it, no different. But now they have so much to help you. Like, you can clean up for a while, go through your withdrawals, get out of your system. Then they can prescribe you Suboxone or buprenorphine, which, is a very powerful opiate. It wets the brain, convinces it that, you have drugs, and then it has this ultra powerful blocker that says, but you're not getting any of the warm fuzzies, no reward. So, it takes away all the cravings, it takes away all the other stuff. And if you do your work, you can successfully walk away from a lifelong problem. You can you can turn your back to it and never look back, and the only way it'll affect you is because you did live that life for a while, and things from that lifestyle come back to haunt you, like people that you know or mistakes you made, and the stigmas, are horrible. But so to answer your question, yeah, I went through all of it, like the stuff that you see in the movies. Yeah, I did. And I'm glad,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, it makes you earn it. And
Yeah.
once you earn it, it makes it easier to stick with it.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine, of course, like through your description and just knowing others that have gone through your particular journey or recovery from, even harder drugs, that it's not a pretty process,
No. No.
but it's also a good additive to your mention as far as sharing your journey to others that may be at a pain point in life and just thinking that drugs are, the way, out, but not many people make it, through that process. So when you shared you were 50, I know I've told you this before in our, when we spoke before, that you were 55, and I was like, what? Because you don't look like 55.
Oh, thank you. I got the gray going, the...
You did gray, but people gray early now these days.
Yeah, they even dye their hair.
Yeah,
That's
the thing.
way, which is...
It's the thing.
Maybe I should tell people I'm 40, But thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. You don't look like what you've been through, as they say. But, you're a musician, so a very talented and skilled musician. How did music play a role, if it did, in your healing process? How did that help?
Well, it gave me my identity.
Mm.
The one thing that I can say, in my lifetime is like, when you have 120, you got to remember, a lot of my music, came from an era where there wasn't digital recording. So you had to go to a studio, you had to use tape, you had to go through all the stuff. You couldn't just do a home recording and have something powerful like you can today.
Yeah.
And like even here, like I have a home studio that I can accomplish a lot. I could put out a lot of records of just myself very easily, even have a band come in if I want to. It's a process. But what music did for me was allow me to do something that I didn't understand I was doing until after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share a story, like we've all heard, what you got to hit rock bottom. I don't have a rock bottom that's traditional like everyone else. I quit my last meeting that I went to. They were going around. It was a big circle, and they started with the person like kind of across from me, and they were telling what the rock bottom was, and it went from person. Then it came on to this guy next to me. This was a guy. He had the golden handcuffs, man. He had the trophy wife. The over $500,000 a year he was making. Managing a whole slew of banks in the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
And, enough money to where he could take his trophy children and his trophy wife on trophy trips during Christmas. Yeah. And one year he went skiing with the family and he broke his leg. Mm-hmm. And they prescribed him the non-habit forming drug Oxycontin. And next thing you know, he lost everything and even got into trouble because he was taking money from the bank. And I attribute that because he wasn't street smart, like when you're on the streets like I was, that you're not going to pay $10 a milligram. You're going to go somewhere else to find it, or you're going to find a way to get it from a doctor or whatever. But in the end, if you don't have those connections and you're desperately sick and the doctors cut you off and you are sick and you think you have money, he lost his trophy wife, he lost his trophy home, he lost his trophy children. He lost everything. And that was the last guy. And then for me, I had to say, I didn't have a rock bottom. I had a lot of fun. What wasn't to like, really? I mean, like there was traveling and everything, girls, money, adoration. When I went into recovery, what I missed the most was the hugs. I used to get hugs. Every show, I'd see people, hey, Mojo, how you doing? You get a big hug. I missed that, all throughout my recovery and things like that. But where music really played its most powerful role in my life was when I was reading through my diary. I had all of these blackouts kind of here. Like there's areas in my life that I don't know what happened,
Yeah.
but I never stopped writing in my diary. No matter what was going on, I wrote in my diary. So I started reading, to fill in the gaps. And then stuff about my music and what I was writing about came up. And so I started listening to my own music, something I don't really traditionally do. By the time I'm done recording and writing, it's such a long process. And then performing it a lot, you just don't. Music created my rock bottom when I realized that I had 124. Well, at the time, there's more now. But at the time, I had 100 some odd songs published, and none of them were happy.
Mm.
And it broke my heart,
Mm.
and realized that what I was actually doing all those years is I was telling everybody what was happening to me,
Mm-hmm.
what was going on in my life. Like I got a song called Codeine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the turnaround for the chorus is Mr. Doctor, what about me?
Mm.
And I went to the streets, I lived at the Y, then another verse is, I called my mother just the other night, said I was sorry, I didn't call her right. Please, mother, don't you cry. What I lived, and that was a terrible thing to realize. Because, I mean, if you look at the current atmosphere, remember on the elections, everybody was screaming and yelling about Trump, and then all of a sudden we had a very young person try to assassinate Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew right away at the time that wasn't somebody who had this big political moral standing that, he wanted to take the guy out. It was more of, I'm online, everybody hates this guy. And he had these, he had, I don't want to say weak, but he had very impressionable eyes and ears.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the hate that everybody throws out into the atmosphere on social media or in music goes to people who are very impressionable.
Oh.
And some people, it's an outlet, they're enjoying music because it's a fun thing for them. Other people are listening to it because they're going through something and they're relating to what you're saying. And then just like anger and all the other stuff, it gets to the wrong people. They think that if I assassinate Trump, everybody will love me. Probably never thought about getting killed or ruining his life or any of the other stuff. And then I think we saw it a couple times to the same type of people. And so for me, when it came to my art, what I know now, it broke my heart. I wonder, how many people did I actually hurt by talking about drugs in such a favorable way, or talking about sex in such a favorable way, or the other indulgences? Because when you're hurting that bad inside like that, what you're trying to do is numb the pain. You're just trying to take all this stuff and make it stop. You want to feel better about yourself. You want to feel better about your life. You don't want to be intimidated or frightened of the future or what's going on. And in my case, I had thousands of people, that were judging me, oh, this is good, that's bad. That was a great show. That's not a good show. I love your music, but I hate you as a person. I love you as a person, but I hate your music. And when you come up from the type of environment that I did, where there's control, there's manipulation, and again, that was then, that's not these people today. I don't know them today.
Yeah.
You find that you're just living the same nightmare over and over. And so it becomes monkey food. So you keep taking more, keep taking more, keep taking more. And so my music gave me my identity, but it also taught me the most valuable lesson that I need to keep in mind as I move forward. And I have ever since, which is, what you say and your art reaches people. It hits their mind and it hits their heart. And you need to approach that with great respect. And if you take it for granted and you start putting anger and hatred, you're going to get that back out of people. You're going to create that. It's going to manifest in other ways. I mean, look at rap music, right?
Yeah.
You know, how that affects so many people. They want to live the gangster life because the way that it's portrayed. The reality of that is far different than what's in songs and music or the pictures and photographs.
Yeah.
And I had all the same things. So, yeah, it saved my life. You know,
Wow.
I don't think that if I did not have music, I don't think I would have survived it. I truly don't believe I would have survived 26 years. I certainly wouldn't have made it through recovery, you know. And at the end of the day, it was such a big thing in my life that I knew no matter what happened to me, like if I was to die right when we get done here, my mark is made. You know, there's something that I've left behind. You know, it's not a home or all this other stuff that fades away. Like, you know, children die, you know, they forget who their great grandparents are, but music and art lives on. So it did all that and more for me. It was the best friend I had in my entire life.
Wow.
To this day.
Wow. So you know, firm believer too that music is, you know, very influential. And you shared that, you know, some of your music, you know, you're kind of saddened by because of what you were sharing at the time was a very bad, you know, bad place, sad place. But what does happy music then sound like to you now? Like, or what's the transition? What has been the transition of your music?
Oh, you know, that's I still write the same way.
Okay.
Oddly enough, you know, but I'm not writing from a point to where, you know, my focal point is like, for example, I would not release a song called Codeine today.
So,
You know, I mean, I would call it something else. I would find a different way to tell that story. You know, now I'm telling different stories about the same things, but just not with this seal of approval the way that I once had. Like I have a YouTube channel called Mojitsu.
okay.
If you go to my website, mojitsu.com, mojitzu.com, you know, you'll find this website where it's just a small YouTube channel. I'm not trying to conquer YouTube. I'm not trying to have endless followers, you know, and all that stuff. But I have this thing called Mojitsu Journeys. And it's where I take videos of where people film where they're at. You know, like they go for a walk with the camera in the middle of a snowstorm, a blizzard in Finland, or Switzerland, or fog in the UK, or the desert, or underwater. And then I do this really trippy psychedelic music. I live stream it. So as I watch it on screen, I'm playing this trippy music to what I'm seeing. And I call it get high music, you know, because now there's recreational marijuana, you know, and just because I have a problem with it doesn't mean everybody else does. I have a friend that, you know, has used opiates like off and on throughout his whole life. Like he picks it up, does it for a while, then he just stops. And then it'd be years. Then he'll like, you know, that was real fun. I'll do it again. Then boom. And then stops. And his life is in order. It's recreational for him, you know, just like marijuana. So my audience as a psychedelic recording artist, you know, I don't want to leave them high and dry.
Okay.
So, I mean, you know, I still write with that same, I love psychedelic music. You know, it allows me this forum to do anything I want. And you put good rhythms to it, you know, different approaches with the guitar. You know, it's such a blank canvas, you know, and with all kinds of colors. So happy music to me is anything I write because I'm happy now. You know, my heart is happy. And so I'm not writing songs about being in pain anymore. I'm not talking about wanting to die. I'm not talking about, being lost or feeling empty. It doesn't mean I don't feel empty at times. We all do.
Yeah.
I still have my own issues and things.
Mm-hmm.
Recovery doesn't take all that away. In fact, in a lot of ways, it can kind of make you feel like you have it worse because you don't have that crutch anymore.
Mm-hmm. But
I still have my music. I still have my art. And you're never alone when you have a dream.
mm,
You're
so
never alone.
yeah, you're in a better place,
Yes,
versus your music versus from what you were before.
very much so.
Nice. So with the just the in recovery essence again though, was there as you're, going towards a higher peak in life, brighter lights, however, you want to term it. Did you have any like hard points though, in staying on the path to recovery?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, at the end of the day, you know, I can look good. I can feel good. I can be in a great place. I can be happy. Well, you just don't arrive there because you stop.
Yeah.
For all you folks out there, anyone seeing this, if you're struggling with addiction, I'm here to tell you that recovery doesn't mean just stopping. Like if you're an alcoholic, you can be sober in 4 days, right? And then you can just stop drinking. Then does that mean you're in recovery? No. It means that you just stop drinking. You stop doing this bad thing. Same thing with opiates and other stuff. Recovery means recover. So you have to rebuild your life. You have to rebuild yourself, and if you're a narcissist or something like where you can't self-reflect, the best you're going to get is stopping. And if that's all you can do is stop, by all means, just stop and leave it there. But if you want to have the good life, the quality life that you seek, you got to involve others. I know that the rooms work for people, the 12-step program. But in my case, when the opioid epidemic hit, I didn't have, like anyone else, I didn't know where to go to a meeting. So I downloaded the NA app, the AA app, and then told me where all the meetings were. Well, so did 5-6 million other people who were caught in that whole epidemic when the government just said doctors could not write any more scripts. And, so anytime I went to a meeting, it was just jam packed. So I felt isolated a lot. And I'm a man who tucks his head in the sand when I'm hurting or whatever. Like one of the dumbest things I did in recovery is I just put my phone down, and for a year and a half, nearly 2 years, I didn't take any calls from my friends. I didn't return text messages or emails. And I remember one time someone tried knocking on the door. They drove like an hour to get to me. And it wasn't that I didn't love them or want them around. I just didn't want to be around people. And by that time, a lot of my life was public. Like I've been in, my first record came out when I was 16. So I've been in the public eye, since that time. And, so when you feel like you have all that going on, not to mention that, my music career, the opioid epidemic affected everything for anybody that was caught up in it. There's stories about gymnasts, professional athletes. Brett Favre had a problem with Vicodin, right? Packer quarterback.
Yeah.
And that became rampant. So all this ugliness about the addiction of pain pills and everything came out publicly. And so there were a lot of people hurting, which meant there was a lot of resources just being sucked up. And the hard thing about that, but I remember very well, was that there was a lot of people who were not sincere about cleaning up. They just wanted to get out of trouble. I've been an addict, alcoholic for how long? Now I got into trouble And so, oh, I'm an addict. I'm an addict. I'm an addict. They think it's a get out of jail free card. And it isn't. You're still accountable for the things that you say and do.
Yeah.
But that's why they have that step. I think it's I could be wrong, the 9th step. I'm not a step guy, but I believe it's the 9th where, you make amends. You talk to people. And I learned so much just by trying to straighten out things. And the hardest part where I really just struggled was watching my career. To me, in my eyes, it felt like it was going up in flames. There were opportunities I couldn't take. There were people that I admired that I could be running with the same wolves. And so I was missing opportunities. I was missing things. And I was just stuck and I couldn't do anything. I felt horrible. I was sick. And even when that part stopped, my life was in disarray because last time, it basically was like Rip Van Winkle. I woke up one day and it's like, I'm this notorious guitar player. I've got these albums and stuff out. I've been to umpteen states and countries and I've done all these things. And I've got this horrible thing that is nagging at me. I'm sick. The thing, of course, I think anybody in their right mind would think, maybe I can just tone it down and let it work for me. But there's no way I could have done that. I wound up, I got lucky. I went on the Suboxone program.
Okay.
And if you don't know what that drug is, it's a miracle drug. And the irony of it is when the opioid epidemic hit, millions of people, they just flooded the whole medical industry because everybody needed help. Nobody knew what to do. Going to meetings after you've been popping pills for 26 years, does that sound like a viable way to, stop? No, it's a horrible, slow, painful thing to go through. And, you want to get off that train just as fast as you got on it. And, and you can't. You have to go the route that you go through. That's the only way you're going to get the prize is by going through that path. And there was a guy at one of the meetings. I went through IOP, intense outpatient, and it was right before I went into rehab facility. And he's like, in break, he just walked up to me. I was talking to this girl, and he said, "Mojo, you're giving me a ride home after group." I thought that was code for I got something. And at the time, I was white as a sheet of paper. I was sick, runny nose. I couldn't sit still. I was taking all these things to keep from crapping all the time. And, I wanted to throw up. So I to this day, I know I would have took it if that's what he had. But what he did, I got to his house. He lived in this really cruddy area too. It was all dark. There was no light lamps on the street, and he had this trailer home there, and it was really seedy, And the thing about addiction takes you all kinds of interesting places, right? And he pulled out this strip of Suboxone and cut the label open, and he held the wrapper open and said, "Take this, put it under your tongue, and shut up." And I did. And within 25 minutes, most of my symptoms were massively reduced. Then within an hour's time, it was as if they were all gone. And I thought I was high, but my brain just went. And that was when I realized that was my ticket. There was no way on earth that I was going to be able to sustain a quality life, pursue music, get back in the game, work a job, have income, pay my bills and everything, and struggle with this massive 26-year-long addiction and recovery. No, there's no way. You'd have to be Superman. And there are people who do that, but I am weak. I am not capable of that. And there was this tool, and it stopped all the things that I could not deal with. like, being sick, the endless cravings, the everything, and just kind of took it all away. And I was able to work on my life. And from that point on, I always had a crutch that I could depend on to help me, but it allowed me to focus on other parts of my life so I could get it in order as best as I can. And I'm still doing it. The thing is, like, recovery doesn't mean that you're all better just because you stop. You come out looking good. I'm very blessed that I came out looking as good as I do. I have lots of friends that they're not here anymore. My 10-year anniversary was plagued with losing 2 people I knew for every year I was sober. And it made me realize that someday I'm going to be a part of someone's number. I knew Mojo or knew him, and, I lost 3 people for every year of my sobriety, and Mojo was in year number 7 or whatever, that makes it hard when you look at that, and you still deal with the challenges of life. And I think that, I want to use something. I went through this really terrible, terrible thing a while back. It was really bad. And I didn't even notice until I made a severance from it that never once did I consider using pills. Throughout the thing, it just was not a concern. And I stayed away from it and built a good foundation. And, did I do that through meetings? No. I did that through counseling. I found myself an addiction specialist. And when I went on the Suboxone program, doctors could only have 100 patients total.
Okay.
So I got lucky, and I dropped dimes on trying to find someone right. And one of the dimes I dropped turned out to be the best in the state, like the leader. When they write stories about the epidemic, they talk to him. He was the number one guy, and he just took a shine to me, and I'm still with him to this day. They're like family to me now at this juncture. But yeah, I think that's a very normal thing, to go through, wanting to throw in the towel. I think it's very normal, but it's not realistic. It's kind of like thinking, I had a bad day at work. I'm just going to get in my car and, drive right into a tree. It may sound like a good idea because you're upset and angry or whatever, but it's just not reality. And so addiction, when you learn to face your problems without using a drug or turning to some type of substance or scapegoat to get away from it, you get better at it. And I may not be perfect. In fact, most addicts are not, but I don't give in. I still try to approach it. And even if things aren't going good or whatever, I now face it. And, and it's better than going the other route because, that only takes you to the gates of hell.
Yeah. I like how you shared, from what I'm hearing is just basically recovery is a process, within itself. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to look perfect. You're going to have your ups and downs, your good days, your bad days. There's no,
you're right.
Seems like there's no end point as far as like, at the end of this, I'm going to be 100% okay. I'm not going to have any worries. I'm not ever going to want the drug again, but you're human, so you're going to probably have those withdrawals and, you're going to have some, moments where they're going to try to challenge you. So, but I'm glad you made it out on the other end for sure. And that you're here today to just share with us a little bit about your journey. I know we can't tell it all in 1 hour, but
the things that I have witnessed, like, I have a lot of fun stories about when I was using, and I have a lot of scary stories. I have a lot of near misses where, I face my mortality and stuff like that. But what do I get out of all that? It is probably something that a lot of people would not agree with. But I believe in my heart that if you are given this epic problem, like addiction or whatever it may be, you were chosen. You were chosen specifically that this is what you're going to have. It is a gift. That's right. I said it. Addiction was a gift. Because I tell you what, I can now, like I told you, I went through this really bad thing. My guard was so low, that when someone came into my life, I didn't understand what love bombing was. I didn't know what a narcissist is, like someone who actually has like the disorder, or how evil and bad they are, and what they do to attack and destroy. And they seek out people like me who are forgiving and kind of in a weakened spot because they have to have this endless supply of validation. And I had one of those. It's like a human Jaws. They'll stop at nothing to destroy your life, even if they have to destroy theirs in a process.
Yeah.
And all they care about is looking good. Now, throughout that whole process, which lasted 2 years, I cannot tell you how many times I said to that person, you don't have to live like this. You don't have to say and do these things. If you just make an effort in a different way, you can walk away from all of it. You don't have to have that. And if you know anything about that disorder, they are incapable of self-reflecting. They are incapable, there's no cure for it.
Yeah.
In fact, narcissism is the only disorder where the people who deal with it, run out and find help and treatment. In fact, I am going through counseling for narcissistic abuse recovery for after what I went through. And but the people who have the disorder don't ever seek help. And it's
rare.
Just they can become self-aware, but they're still a narcissist and they're still doing something, to feed that monkey. It's a really bad thing. Now, yeah, it sucked what I went through. It sucked what that lady did to me. She was a liar, dishonest, manipulative. Horrifically, bad, like just in all sense of the word evil. But it also showed me that, one, I was in a rut. I was just working my job. I wasn't doing things that got me out of that rut, and started doing a lot more creatively because I needed to express it. It showed me that I no longer have this need to have a crutch, when I go through very bad things and stuff. But most importantly, it showed me what my character is, that I can look someone in the eye and I can say, I messed up. I didn't mean to hurt you. I apologize. And, or face someone and say, hey, you're not healthy for me, and try to do it in a nice way, or things like that. It taught me so much about myself and the resilience that I have, that, I still regret meeting that person, knowing that person, or allowing them anywhere near me in my life. I don't think that's ever going to change. And I can't say that about any other individual in my life, including the dentist that basically sentenced me to a lifetime of addiction and hurt and pain, when he did those things.
Yeah.
But, at the same point, that gift of addiction, you learn that if you go through that, I have insights that normal people don't have. I can approach people with things that other people simply just can't or won't. And we all know people who can't apologize, right? They can never be wrong. Or you get the, I'm sorry, but, I'm sorry, but you, or I'm sorry, but this. It's passing the buck. It's never just, I apologize, I made a mistake, or whatever it is. And if your heart's in the right place, like, and you're not genuinely trying to hurt anyone, and something you did does, what's the problem in owning it? And saying, that nailed you bad, man. I wasn't thinking, I didn't realize when I was doing this stuff to get ahead of my job that you were going to get, fired or whatever. When I turned this stuff in, I had no idea it was you, or whatever the circumstances may be. It's easy to do that because you don't have that turmoil in your life. You're not that ugly monster that you're running from. And see, arrive at a point at 55 to where I'm able to say that, if I wasn't me, I would want to be my friend.
Oh, wow.
I think it's pretty amazing. I wouldn't have did that without addiction, and this, I don't think I would have came to it the way that I have now,
Yeah.
or the insights of the empathy and so forth. It's very frustrating gift, but still a gift nonetheless.
Wow.
You know.
Wow. As you mentioned, that's pretty powerful, though, as you termed it to as a gift, the gift of addiction, just relating it to pretty much what you have, how you were, how you seen yourself and what you were, reflecting back on that to who you are now, and the lessons that you learned from it, because and as you said, like the gift of it all, for me is, from the takeaway I hear is that you made it through, because not many, again, have made it through. They're not looking at it as a gift. I think you can, you're past it now. You're moving, and when I say past it, I mean you're still, of course, probably
Right.
some
That's
work.
exactly it. I'm past that part of my life. That is, I remember that version of me very well, and I'm never going to forget it. And I forgive the people that have hurt me up to this point.
Yeah.
And where I could resolve things, I did, and I tried, but not everything can.
Yeah.
The
And
thing
you
about
forgiven yourself, have you not? Have you gone through you forgiven yourself part,
that's a tough one.
or have you?
That's a tough one. To be honest with you, like I understand everything, and which I mean that, like, I had help. Recovery did not come easy. Like, there were people in my life that were in my corner, and it was a vicious fight. I took on a dragon that murdered, 20 of my friends. It murdered millions of people. It's still murdering people. And it is relentless. It never stops. It's just like that narcissist. It will stop at nothing to destroy you. And you have to not let it. You have to kind of keep the thing up. And so I carry the weight of how my addiction affected others. I carry the weight. So to ask if I've forgiven myself, I would like to say yes, I do. I've forgiven my mistakes for sure, but the whole picture, it's been really hard to understand that if I wasn't me and I found myself in those shoes, I would have gone on the same path. Any of my neighbors, anybody, I mean anybody, if they had the same circumstances that I had, they would have went down the same road. They would have went down the same path. The only thing that would be different is who made it out on the other side and who didn't. Now, for me, I'm proud that I was able to do 9 records, and in fact, I just did my first full recording sober.
Oh, wow.
Just a few years back.
Congratulations.
Let me tell you what a mind blow. It was just like, pow, blow my mind. And the intensity. And I was in like a studio where like over 100 #1 hits were recorded at. Yeah, pressure, learning to deal with it. It caught up to me, but did I want to use? No, I didn't.
Nice.
So it's a complicated answer. So I'd like to say I've partially forgiven myself, and I'm working on understanding that it's just a thing that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do feel like I threw a lot of my life away. Like, the thing about addiction is like you make stupid decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of my stupid decisions were, sure, yeah, I'll come over and I'll do all those shows in Europe, right? 12 weeks, no problem. And I leave my home with $200 in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And I arrive in Amsterdam, right? Which, they're very liberal there,
Yeah.
with what's legal
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. And then the exchange rate is, at the time was like, I think I paid $1.42 for €1. And then that was before the exchange rate. So that $100 was more like 140.
Mm-hmm.
And how stupid it is to leave your home, your country, with a guitar and a bag of clothes, and you're going to just go and you're going to live from gig to gig, gig to gig, gig to gig. I don't think a normal person would do that, but I did because I was high
Yeah.
and, and I was able to find places where I could buy it over the counter.
Mm-hmm.
Like Thailand, I got morphine,
Mm-hmm.
over the counter in Thailand. In Spain, in some areas, because they didn't have a doctor nearby, I could just ask the pharmacist for I think they had the 10 milligram or the 15 milligram, I forget what it, paracetamol, it basically Tylenol with codeine.
Mm-hmm.
But I could get that anywhere. So, but that's the upside to addiction too. It made it easier for me to stand in front of people and perform
Mm-hmm.
and to bare my soul and face the consequences of it. Because, like, the consumer, I mean, they'll fill you up, spit you out, and that's when they like you.
Yeah.
I mean, now my day, you put out an album, like people want the album. Now you got to put out singles, and how do you keep up with, you got to do that so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a different game.
Mm-hmm.
But
Some of the things that they people face to you know in the generality of what they do, what you do, like as a musician, like you said, have to face that much
right,
pressure, of people to perform. Sometimes like their go-to is, let's, do whatever opioids or whatever, people may feel like they have to do in that time to kind of
right.
give them strength. But in the as we wrap up, we're getting ready to wrap up the show. I want to ask you though, before we do, like, all that you've been through, the bit that you've shared, and I'm sure, and more, again, we'll have to have you on for a part 2 or something, because I know you have like a full novel to address. But what advice would you give to someone like who's in the same situation or was in the same situation and still having a hard time that you were in trying to balance like their recovery with their passion for music or for, life in general, to get back to a place where, they want to be or they once were? What advice would you give someone to help them transition their life to a
Well,
place?
for starters, I would say, if you're struggling with addiction, you know it.
Mm.
Like no one needs to tell you that you're an addict or you're an alcoholic. In my story, interestingly enough, I've been in bars since I was 16.
Okay.
I don't smoke cigarettes. I never did. I don't even drink coffee. Never have.
Okay.
And I just stopped drinking, quit drinking, I don't know, like 2 years before I went into recovery, because I didn't want to spend the money. So, I mean, my addiction came from one thing and one thing only, and I did as much of it. But I still knew that I was an addict and I needed help, throughout a lot of that way, just like other people do. My advice would be to just say screw everybody, especially yourself. That voice that's telling you that you're not a good person, or that all these things, like, maybe your family, like the narcissist, right? Her mother abused her. She claimed, all of her ex-husbands, as in plural, they abused her. All of her ex-boyfriends, probably including me now, abused her. Well, that's fine and dandy how you got there. What are you going to do from that point on? Are you going to just ruin your life and turn out that way? If you're struggling with addiction, you fight for things. You have the ability to scrounge and find things, to come up with money. You have talents that you develop because of your addiction. Those very same talents become some of your most powerful weapons to battle the same demon that is killing you. Screw that voice in your head that's telling you all those things. It's not real. It's just a bad version of yourself that wants you to die. And all those people that hurt you the way that they did, screw them. They didn't do that to you because you're a bad person. They did that to you because you were the target. It had nothing to do with you as a person. You were the weak person that they could, exert their dominance on. Don't listen to those people. Don't listen to those memories. Don't give in to all that stuff. And if the same way that you would, still ask that female or that guy out that, is with someone else, but you really want to date them, so you find a way to talk to them even though you don't feel like you're up to par. You have every tool that you need to overcome your problem. And there are resources that are there, and, you're a hero. You're not a piece of crap because you became an addict. You're a hero. You've been sporting this injury, this thing that's been terrorizing you in your life for how many years? You survived it. And you still have the audacity to look in the mirror and say you're a piece of crap? That's just insane. It's just not true. It's not real. So don't give in to all that, and don't give up on yourself. And remember that you are important. You are valuable. You are loved. People respect you. Don't focus on the bad ones. Learn to focus on the better. And for God's sake, in your journey, never, ever, ever look at how far you have to go. Only look at how far you've come. And you will see that you're building more and more and more and more. And remember that the same things, situations, the same people that hurt you to help lead you into whatever that is that you're doing, or the bad things that you need these crutches, or whatever your story is. Remember that most of those people, if not all of them, would not be able to overcome what you have. So don't dismiss your power and strength. Don't lose sight of how valuable and important you are. Someone loves you, even if you think that nobody does. You are loved. God loves you. I love you. I don't even have to meet you and know you, but I care. My cat, Zumi, she loves you too, And if that's not enough for you to look in the mirror and say, I'm going to make this thing that is hurting me stop, then you need to dig a little bit deeper and find it, because you have the skills. You have everything that you need because you've survived it for how long? There's your proof. You can walk away from it, and you're going to lose people. You are. You're going to lose people. I lost friends, and the narcissist cleared out the last of the fair-weathered friends that I had. They cleared out the closet, so I know where I stand with everybody in my life. And the new people that I meet, I now have a new set of skills to discern, let this person in my circle, eject that person, and you don't have to take on other people's problems. So why be an addict? Why be an alcoholic? Or why struggle with whatever addiction? It could be sex, it could be drugs, alcohol. You don't have to live that way. You don't. You can decide to make the change. It may not be easy, and it won't be. But once you start getting going, you start realizing that you're a scrapper. And the next thing you know, you wake up, poof, you got 10 years under your belt, and it flew like that.
Oh,
I can't even tell you how fast that flew by for me.
wow.
Crazy, but it's true. And you can have your own version of looking good and standing tall. Whatever your story is, remember that your addiction, your problem is a gift.
Mm,
So be grateful for it. Be grateful that you're going to learn how to be a better person. Be grateful that you're going to learn how to take accountability and responsibility, because Lord knows there's people out there who just can't take any.
mhm.
And they can't apologize for the smallest thing.
Yeah.
They have to be in control. They have to win. They have to be right. Like the narcissist always had to be right and cared more about her image than the person she was hurting
Mm,
while saying, I love you.
mm,
And that's crazy.
yeah.
That's the epitome of evil. And if you have this problem, you didn't get it because you're a bad person.
Mhm,
You got it because you're special.
mhm.
And you have everything you need to rise above. That would be what I would say. And you don't have to live like that. So don't.
Mm. Wow. Thank you so much once again for coming on and sharing a little bit of your journey.
I
I
babble a lot.
Oh no, you're good. Listen, you're in the right room. Like I said, I got the gift of gab. But I do, I
Yes, I
always
do.
let my guests talk. I try not to dominate the conversation because I want to hear your story too. But I have the gift of gab, so sometimes people have to tell me. But
Yeah, my friends, I tell them just to tell me to shut the F up.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit about your journey. And I love that part, as you mentioned in encouraging others. It's so important not to give up on yourself,
Right.
and to also not look at how far you have to go, because I know that can throw you off.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
the best of us, it can throw us off, when you realize how long is this journey going to take me to
Right.
deliver. So I love that. And thank you for sharing that. You all will be able to, one more mention. I'm sorry. There is, I believe too, as Mojo mentioned, there's a scrapper on the inside of you. So don't give up on whatever it is
Right.
that you're transitioning through in this life, whether it be, a drug addiction or something else. Don't give up on yourself. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you for tuning in. You all will be able to find out more information. Please check the description area so that you can learn more about Mojo, about his music, where to find him. All his links will be there. So be sure to follow him and join him in continuing on in his journey and in his music journey. But thank you for watching us. This is from Grief to Purpose, the podcast. And we will see you next time. Thank you all. Bye.
One last thing.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
My email address is mojo@mojoperry.com, mojoperry.com. And that's also my website. If you're struggling and you feel like you have nowhere to turn, send me an email. Just send me an email, okay? I as soon as I get it, I will do my best to reply, unless there's like a bazillion of them, which would not surprise me. But I'll be an ear for you. You don't have to feel like you have nothing or nobody. I know what that feels like. I was there. Yeah, I was there. So if you need to do that, by all means, send me an email. And if you want some music and you can't afford it, email me. I'll send you some links for free downloads. And, hope you enjoy it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for
much.
having me.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. Don't forget, you guys, to also be sure to subscribe to the podcast. All right, you guys, this is From Grief to Purpose. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.